Thank you for having me. Thank you all for coming today. It's a big treat to get to share what I do. Some people stay in their studios and weave, and it's really nice to do that and to get to be out in the world and share what I do. And you are welcome to ask me questions during the talk. I'm happy to do that, or you can ask me questions after. Either way is just fine. So yesterday, we started a class here, and a couple questions students asked me. I said, oh, wait, I'll tell you tomorrow, which is really unusual. I usually like blurt out everything. But someone said, how did I start? And I said, I would tell you a story about that today. So I was living in San Francisco in the early 80s, and I went and saw the Judy Chicago dinner party at the Modern Art Museum. And I don't know if you know that show, but people from all over the country made embroidered placemats, and there were ceramic place settings, and it was this amazing event. And I was doing some weaving at the time, but I didn't really know about contemporary tapestry. So at this exhibit, as you enter the exhibit, there were panels of flat tapestry weaving, which I had not seen before. And I got really excited about the weavings, and I asked where were they made? And it turned out they were made in San Francisco, and they were made in the neighborhood where I lived in San Francisco. So, you know, and as the years go by and I get to tell that story, it's more amazing to me that I got to learn about the San Francisco Tapestry Workshop, which is where these pieces were made. Yes, and Jackie and I, in my second class, we sat side by side, and seeing you now is just a treat. Hello, Art. So yes, so there's a lot of history connected with when I first learned this way of weaving tapestry. And I had to include this picture from the workshop in the olden days, in the very beginning, just before I was there. So
may I point out that the gentleman on the far right is Jean-Pierre Larochette, for those who have met.
Yes, so he came, Jean-Pierre and his wife Yaya Lurie came to San Francisco State to work with the textile graduate students, and they formed a workshop in Noe Valley. It grew from that, and one of the first projects they had was to weave the dinner party. And I didn't know them yet, but it was soon after that I met. So this is the traditional low warp loom, like you have one here at PTA. That's the traditional loom from Aubusson in France. So this was my first project. Well, I did a sampler, and then I did this project. And I did, in the early days, I did lots and lots of drawings and paintings for my pieces. Now we do a little shortcut sometimes. But I was taught to color code all my bobbins for the project. So all those little numbers are, you know, it's red 1, 2, 3, 4, green 1, 2, 3, 4. And we wove color samples. Now I usually just twist the yarn on my fingers. But I'm glad that I had those experiences in the early days. So this was my first project, and many years later I went back to the same group of photographs I had of this parasol, and I liked it still, so I did this one. And that's a self-portrait. You might not recognize me now, but that's me from long ago. Yeah, so there's the photograph.
So
I
it
worked
is from a photograph.
Yes, it is from the photograph. So this is Burano is an island near Venice, and long ago I was lucky to do a lot of traveling, and I was very inspired from traveling, and the colors of the buildings there were just incredible, and I wanted to weave them, and I really didn't know a lot about how to design, and I had several photographs, and I just taped them together, and they made this very wide a piece that size, and that is how I did that project. So these are images of that piece, and also I and many people love, excuse me, love clotheslines. So there is the clothesline in that piece. And this piece, Market Women, is from Campeche, Mexico. And again, so I do painting and collage and photographs and combinations for designing. And so when I saw the woman with the gold shawl, that was before I could take pictures myself, which, and it was, Dan, take pictures of this woman. I just have to weave her. So I had a lot of photographs of her to work from. And so you can see her there better. So I've done a lot of weavings of textiles in my tapestries. So you have her shawl and her embroidered blouse and her woven skirt all in the flat tapestry. So different things take us in different directions. And I read in the New York Times Magazine about this man who loved sunflowers, so much so that he had just had commissioned bronze sculptures of sunflowers. And I thought, well, there's a person who might want a tapestry. Who else would want a tapestry? So I actually wrote him a letter. I don't usually do that kind of thing. And I wrote him and I said, I use this traditional, beautiful tapestry techniques like that were used in medieval days. Would you like a tapestry? And he said, maybe so. So I gave myself an education painting sunflowers while I was hoping this project was going to happen. And this was a small piece that I did while I was trying to get this commission. And I had been told or imagined you're supposed to give someone 3 very complete designs for a commission, which I don't finish my designs very thoroughly. I just get them where I can weave from them. But I thought I needed to have finished pictures. So I worked really hard on 3 paintings. And then after I sent them the 3 paintings, he sent me a photograph that he had taken that was this image. This is the tapestry. I don't have the pictures, but he sent me this photograph and he says, would you do this? And I said, sure. No, well, exactly, no problem. So I sweated quite a bit, but anyway, that was that project. And then, yeah, exactly. Be careful what you ask for. That is right.
You must have been so thrilled.
You say me or him? He. Oh, I hope so. I was thrilled. I hope he was thrilled. Yes. So he came to say he was in New York. He is in New York. I've actually not seen it installed, but he came to San Francisco, and I went to his hotel. I brought one of my big pieces rolled up, and I spread it out in the lobby so he could see that I really did this kind of work. And then I think, he said, okay. Yes. So anyway, so at another point, I have a good friend who taught, he taught in Japan, and a lot of his students visited us in San Francisco. And so I had a lot of mail with Japanese stamps on them. So I took this pair of stamps. And so there's the actual weaving. And before this project, I painted all my designs full scale back in the day. And and this was a point where I was actually able to print portions of the pictures. Now I can print big size for not very expensive, but at the time I had to draw the design into rectangles so I could have it printed and then put it back together. So the black and white is actually the cartoon, and this is the reverse image because my dear students know that I weave from the back, and they haven't complained out loud to me about having to learn that yet. So that's why the design is from the back. Okay. So I had been weaving large pieces, and I thought that that was a very good thing to be doing. And then a show came along in Australia, and all the pieces were supposed to be 8 by 8 inches. I see in this picture, it didn't turn out exactly, but so I thought, well, that'll be easy to do an 8 by 8 inch piece. So I learned, and thank goodness this was long ago, because it was very humbling to learn how difficult it is to do small work and how important each little bit of it is. Whereas when you have bigger pieces, you have more space to do your work. So I did that long ago, and I did it from a 1 minute drawing, and then I painted the drawing, and then I did the same design 4 by 4 feet because I wanted to play with it a little more. So I did the little one and then the big one. And this piece is here, right there. So yesterday they asked me how I did this project, and my husband helped me do this on the computer. I am not a Photoshop person myself. I prefer painting and drawing, though I appreciate what you can do with it and how you can use it. So I had the seed packet, and I had views out my window of greenery, and I had some cards of some rugs. So like we put all that together, and Dan helped me do that. And then that was the design for that piece. And I did a lot of drawing and painting of the poppies. So with the same with the sunflower, I think if I hadn't spent months drawing the actual sunflowers, I would not have known how to do that weaving. It really taught me those shapes. I don't think I could have taken that photograph. So I was grateful that I designed first and then did that piece. And so a lot of my small pieces have been for exhibitions, and that's just sort of fun to spur you along to do a project. And this was for a project. All the pieces were supposed to be, I think, yeah, they were supposed to be 4 inches. They're supposed to be 10 centimeters high, and I didn't know that was 4 inches high. So some of the pieces were like mine, and some were huge, and some were skinny. But it was this wonderful show in Australia of small pieces, and this is Mirror Lake in Yosemite. And there's some silk in the water to give it the shimmery look. Most of my materials are wool, though sometimes I use some silk. And that's from the photograph. So this shows a little bit more about just how I plan out what I'm going to be doing with the yarns and so there were a lot of different whites and grays to go in the project. And this was playing around with those different gradations. This is, I think this might be the only picture I had handy of my loom, so I wanted to include it. So I showed you in the beginning the low warp loom, which is the traditional Obesan loom. This is a high warp loom that was made by John Shannock, who made the metal looms that are here that you have. And this was this amazing printmaker wanted a tapestry of one of her prints. So you can see me at the loom, and next to me is it's the actual print. And I was hoping I wasn't hurting it, sticking a little tape all over the print to get to match the colors. And off and on, I like to take figure drawing classes. And so this was from a figure drawing. There's the drawing. And this piece is just 5 by 5 inches, and I wanted to do it as directly as I could from life. So I have the poppy and I have the watercolor, and the watercolor was actually my design. So this was what was behind the loom for the poppy. And quince is one of my favorite flowers in the winter time. And so I try to do drawings and paintings every year of quince. It doesn't necessarily happen that way, but I did this piece a long time ago. So you can see a little bit about the process with the spiral and the flowers, and then I put it together in the design. So this was quite a long time ago, and then just recently I did another piece with quince, and I wanted to experiment, and I actually cut my design into strips and wove them and that was the cartoon. So you can see the paper there. For me, that was very experimental. Oh, it's something a lot of people have done, but that was new for me. And I wanted, there were a lot of things I was trying to figure out in this project. I wanted the edges to not all be the same. So I was playing around, and each little square was woven pretty much separate. One or two of them are together, but they were woven as each little tapestries with that piece. Yeah, and you can see it on the loom there. So I know a lot of you are tapestry weavers, but some people might not know that you can weave most weaving is side to side, and some tapestry is side to side. This way of working, you work in areas. So you can see how I'm building up certain areas and I haven't woven other parts there. This is in Marin County, not too far from where I live, and a really favorite place to go. I had been going to this place for a very long time, and I wanted to do this weaving, so I went back specifically to take pictures to work from. And right after I wove it, the top of the hill fell off. There's no longer that hole in this weaving. So when I look at it, I have to tell you that part. So you can see some of the images from that. Yeah, so that was just interesting. So my sketches and designs are usually fairly rough. They're just enough for me to be able to interpret when I'm weaving. So instead of weaving color strips like in the very beginning, I might do what's in this piece. It's a little quicker. Yeah. So this is my most personal piece that I have done. And so my closest girlfriend from college, her name was Angela, and she died when she was 50. And I had wanted to do some kind of a tribute to her. And I thought it was, at that point, I hadn't lost so many close people. Now we're older, we've lost more people, but I thought it was going to be a really sad project. It took me 5 years to do a weaving for her. But when I did it, it was actually really joyous because I was going through all these experiences we had had together, and I didn't realize I'd get to do that. And since the weaving took quite a while, I had a lot of time to be with her. So this, it might be a little hard to know what's going on. So she had sent me a postcard, and the girl is from an embroidery, and that was on the front of the postcard, and the writing was on the back, and the writing of this postcard was back when we used to tell our entire life history in a postcard, who she was going out with and who she didn't want to see anymore. This was all in this one postcard, and it's like it's tiny writing. So I just put the front of the postcard on top of right where it went on the back, and I was giving a talk in at a little craft school in Massachusetts, and I showed this slide, and this woman said, "My son lives on Cabrillo Street," and you can only see the CAB, and it's like, so anyway, so the evolving stories are what I really love about the different pieces. So yeah, so there, oh yeah, so there's what the postcard actually looks like on the front. Oh, and there's the back, so you can see the whole life story on the back. Yes, and only when I blew up the design and read the date, which is June 25th, my older daughter, that's her birthday, but she was born many years after I got the postcard. So, blah blah blah.
What year is the postcard?
The postcard, can I read? Was from. Let's see if I can tell you. Early 80s. Let's see, the 80s, sometime in the 80s. My daughter was born in 89, so it was before that. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see the writing. So again, I thought that the writing was going to be really difficult in this picture, I mean in this tapestry, but so I put a small section of the writing behind my warp that was 10 to the inch, and I kept blowing it up to make it weavable. And by the time I made it weavable, it was the size that I needed the piece to be, 4 by 5 feet. So it turned out that the writing was not very hard to do, but the fabric of the cloth, the skirt, turned out to be the hardest thing I'd ever done. But all that means is it's really hard when you start and try to figure it out, and then it's hard, and then you love it. So that's what happened with this project. It's not what you think usually. So, okay, so, and then a few years ago, my mother and sister, that's my sister on the right, my mother and sister commissioned me to do a weaving of my sister's pond. And she gave me liberties to use a lot of different ponds, not just her pond. So her pond is pretty, but it's not quite like this pond. But yeah, but this is from her actual pond, and yeah, which is pretty. You're right, that's pretty, and that's the design for the weave. Yes, yeah, so it's so this was a collage from that photograph and other. I was just looking at gardens. And looking at gardens, taking pictures, and then I came up with this design for that piece. This is Vernal Falls in Yosemite. I think, yeah, beautiful place.
Do you use a different set for your big pieces versus your small pieces?
So most of my large pieces are 10 to the inch. Most of these little pieces are 12 to the inch. And that's almost all that I've done. Usually that's the size of them. Yes. So that's the photograph, and that's the weaving. So it, and I used a lot of silk in the water. To try to give it that shimmery look. So there's many of these be careful what you wish for kind of projects, So rarely someone writes me out of the blue and says, I have a wall, I want a tapestry. So I'm showing you this what happened because there it is on the wall. But these people didn't get 3, and they didn't even get 2 designs, which I told them they could get. They got 1 design. And luckily they said, oh yes, that's just fine. The 1 design took me a long time. We settled somehow early on an oak tree, but it was winter. So this was my oak tree that I worked from. And then I painted it. I found out that there is paper that you can print on, and I printed the black and white tree, and then, because I kept trying to paint it and it was too hard to copy and paint it because it was so detailed with the branches and the grasses. So I was able to print it and then paint on top of the black and white. And that is what that is. And there are some of the yarn colors for this project. And you can see the different bobbins, the different combinations. So there's several strands that are mixed together to make the colors that I was using. And you can see that in progress there. So cutting off celebrations are my favorite thing. And my students here don't know this, but maybe, but to complete all the effort and hard work you put into a project, instead of saying, come look at my beautiful work that I made, even though you kind of wish people would think that, but you don't tell them that. You say, please come and celebrate my efforts. So you get to throw yourself a party. So that's what this is. And some people are out looking in and some are behind me. So everyone that's there at the party gets to cut some of the threads and be part of the celebration. And last week in my studio, we had 2 cutting offs, and the week before we had 2. So this is a very exciting event. This is a piece I did for a wine bar in Oakland. So if you come to Oakland, you can see it hanging. These lovely people showed me this one picture of this very famous ancient ceramic cup. And then I did many, many, many designs for them. And they very politely, like, didn't say anything. And finally, I did a design straight from the cup. And they said, that's what we want. So that was that. So unlike a lot of my projects, which have lots and lots of colors, that is the entire color palette for this piece, which made things easier in a lot of ways. Though I kept not believing that that was all I needed, and I kept not winding very many bobbins, even though in hindsight, I could have wound a lot more bobbins, right? Okay, so you see that in progress. So you can see my tray of my loom with my little cups of different colors on there. And you can see the ends that are on the back of my weaving. This was a watercolor I did of wildflowers, and let's see, yeah, the water, I'm just looking to see if I reversed it. I think the watercolor is the cartoon for this tapestry. So I really like to have projects that can be direct. That's a very hard thing to do in this medium, to do a painting and weave it and have it look like it was fresh. So then I'm almost done, if you're not worn out from all this talking. I'm almost done. So I just had, I'm showing you highlights for decades, so I don't want you to think that, that there's a whole lot more. But just before COVID, I was commissioned to weave this painting, which again, somehow I said, oh, sure, I can do that. No problem. And so then things got delayed, and and I had these amazing tapestries I got to work on when people were not out in the world very much. And so this is the actual, let's see, yeah. Oh, that's actually the, see, I thought this was the painting. That's the weaving. Here's the painting that I did not do. So the owners of this restaurant purchased this painting, and they had this idea that they wanted their private dining room to have the painting on one wall and the weaving on the other wall. Don't ask me, but I said, great idea. Sure. I'll do that for you. And okay, so yeah, so there's the cartoon, which is just taken from the painting. And there's the detail. So this was 10 to the inch. And a lot of pieces you start and you find out what that piece needs and that way of working, and you get more into it and you sort of know. This project, there was this amount of oysters. Once I figured this out, I was done. And then there was a certain kind of flour. And once I did that, that was done. So it was hard. There was one piece of cheese with a knife stuck in it. Once I figured that out, that was done. So anyway, there were a lot of parts of it. And I had poppies, which I had woven before, but most of it was pretty new for this project. So I did that piece for a painting, and then the lovely person who owns the restaurant said, well, we want you to do another piece that you design. So that is fairly recent. So I did these two. So the restaurant is California cuisine. So what could be better than artichokes? So I did these artichokes, and what was fun about having these so big is lots of parts of them are pretty abstract, which made it fun. I think I have a deep, So there's the cartoon, which is brighter than the picture. So this is a close-up of the weaving. So with this size, there's room to play around in the leaves of the artichokes. With something little, you have to be a lot more focused and precise. So even though this was big, there was a lot of play that went on in there. And what I'm currently working on is it's 10 by 8 inches. A dear friend is turning 70 in June, and his wife said, I'd love you to do a weaving for him. And I said, of course I'll do that. So this was really fun because this is a very dear friend, and hopefully it's very obvious the things that he loves. And I hope it won't be like, oh yeah, of course, but it is kind of a, oh yes, of course. He loves bright orange. He loves hummingbirds. He's a sax player. He loves orange blossoms. So that's what he's going to get. And somehow I'm going to get that done by early June, which is not next week. So, and that's the weaving in progress. And I'm done. Thank you.